Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MarineLord vs VortiX. This is day number 4 of the $100,000 N4C tournament. We are starting with Altai in game number 1 of this best of 5. Spawning on the left side will be MarineLord playing as the Chinese in blue, and somewhat off meta of a civilization pick is what VortiX is utilizing on the right side. He is going to be playing the Holy Roman Empire in red. We have seen a lot of different civilization selections on this map so far. Delhi, sort of the civilization that gets all the bans these days. So that's not a civilization that you see very frequently nowadays, but that's just because it is a commonly banned civilization. If it wasn't banned, it would be a possibility for this map just like any others. You sometimes see French, but most commonly you see English and Chinese. Now we're seeing some Holy Roman Empire being utilized over here. MarineLord, currently the #1 spot in the Swiss bracket. He is the only undefeated player of the tournament so far. And not only is he 3-0 in the sets that he has played, the brutal thing is that he only dropped one game so far. So he won 3-0 against Lucifron. He then defeated the Muslim 3-0, and his only game loss came against Beastie QT, which was on Dry Arabia. He won that set 3-1, so he's currently topping the leaderboard with just a single game drop. Meanwhile, on the other side for VortiX, he had a tough time against Beastie QT in the first round. He lost 3-1, but then he redeemed himself and took down Lucifron in a 3-1 fashion. And after that, he was successful taking down Lidakor 3-0. So currently, VortiX is at the higher part of the Swiss bracket, not in a position to get directly into the semifinals, however. Looking at the players' bases, we do see a couple of things to talk about here, so let's jump straight towards those. You do have two forests, both at the back here for our red player VortiX, but the thing that's a little concerning for him is that his front is wide open. Look at that, not a single crossing over here that he could utilize to wall. And this is going to be overly concerning, especially against the Chinese, which is a civilization that can easily flood you with units. It's one of the more underappreciated things of the Chinese, but just like, let's say, the Delhi, the Chinese can also overrun you with a lot of feudal age units. Talk about archers and horsemen, spearmen horsemen, or Song Dynasty Juganu horsemen, and it looks like we're going to have what is that, a Dark Age spearman rush. Now, that is not something that you commonly see. I didn't see MarineLord scout close to the base of VortiX, so I'm suspecting that he hasn't seen that just yet. And it looks like VortiX is pulling off some off-meta choices over here. He is definitely a player that can bring up some brand new strategies. Strategies that he has worked on with his brother Lucifron together. We haven't seen this from Lucifron just yet, but I'm suspecting that as the tournament goes forward, we're going to see strategies that are employed by both of these players, simply because I'm fairly certain that they play a ton of games together. They are brothers, so who else to practice with, right? It's possible they practice with other people as well, but of course your best practice partner is going to be your brother, and I'm fairly certain that some of the strategies that they're going to utilize are going to be very similar. With that being said, MarineLord definitely seems to be caught off guard by those spears, and this is a great aggression over here for VortiX. The thing with this aggression is that it is harassing the berry pack. Oh, lag spike. Hopefully it's not going to be a constant thing. We got some lag spikes today. But anyways, looks like the heart rate monitors are also a little bit off sync over here. You can see that it's a little bit out of the screen. So what I wanted to talk about here, as the overlay person apparently is just now moving the heart rate monitor below the webcam. So one of the things to talk about here is that that mill is the heart and soul of the Chinese food economy in Dark Age, because you do have that being supervised. That's where you place your sheep, but that's where you also have your hunt. So the fact that VortiX is able to push this one is fairly big, and he's able to deny the hunt from the opponent potentially over here. Now, he's going to try and burn this one down, but I think MarineLord will be able to get the Barbican of the Sun up. He's going to be able to repair this mill, so this mill won't be taken down. I think if VortiX's spearmen arrived a little faster, this could have been a little more dangerous. The idea is great. I just feel like you don't really have the time window to do enough damage on that mill before your opponent gets the resources needed for the Barbican of the Sun. And because the town center is rather close, you can't really charge in on those villagers underneath the Barbican, because they will just get taken down. So with that, you're going to have Feudal Age in here for MarineLord, and now you're seeing some walls come up on the flanks for VortiX. So he's definitely respecting the fact that MarineLord could get some counterattacks going on both flanks. But I'm curious to see how he's going to handle this central part of the map. He's going up with the Aachen Chapel right now. MarineLord not mining a single bit of gold, which means that he's not rushing up a fast Song Dynasty. Instead, what likely is going to be the scenario is that he's going to open with a couple of archers, knowing that his opponent already is going for spears. And then archers and horsemen could be a composition here. Indeed, that's exactly what we're seeing. Archers and horsemen on the way for MarineLord. On the left side, you could see VortiX trying to vote up, but that was discovered by MarineLord. MarineLord is using his scout to harass that villager. Looks like VortiX is going to be able to drop all of those wall foundations, but one, look at that. MarineLord is doing an exceptional job just blocking that position, and with that, his horsemen are arriving, and it looks like that's going to be a villager picked off over here as well. Even all of the walls are deleted by VortiX. He's like, okay, I won't be able to finish those at all, so I might as well just cancel all of those. But this is the problem here for VortiX. Now, I'm wondering if he wanted to go straight to Castle Age from this Dark Age aggression, play sort of that Mongol style of approach, go Dark Age aggression into Fast Castle, because that could be very powerful here for the HRE. The problem is that MarineLord is diagnosing this well, and now you're seeing horsemen and archers come in, and as I said, the front of VortiX's base is very much open. Now, it's worth noting that VortiX doesn't only have this gold mine at the front, he also has a backup gold mine over here in particular. So that gold mine over there at the back is something that could be used as a fallback option. And that is going to be immensely helpful for VortiX, making sure that he's not going to get cut off from gold. Now, he's still banking quite a lot of food, and I wonder if he's going to start thinking about men-at-arms now. Because keep in mind that the HRE can make Feudal Age men-at-arms, and those would work to a certain extent against the horsemen and archers. Now, Feudal Age men-at-arms are expensive and not spectacular, so it's not necessarily ideal for VortiX, but it's definitely something that he could potentially think about if he wants to counter this army with just a single type of a unit. Archer numbers rapidly increasing, and as I said, I do believe that the Chinese is one of the most underappreciated civilizations in the game, because the ability to flood units like this is something that's comparable to the Delhi's abilities. To a certain extent, it's comparable to the Mongols as well. You do have an efficient economy with the mill and the being supervised, of course. And you also have a very efficient military production thanks to the fact that you do have the officers supervising it. And now you see the army of MarineLord taking the fight against VortiX over here. Bit of a flickering over here. I do believe the spectator was switching POVs back and forth. And that's where it happens. Forward tower coming in from MarineLord. We have seen tower rushes before with the Chinese, but those were direct tower rushes. This time around, it's going to be a push supported by a tower rush here. Chinese builders building faster definitely helps. And it looks like all the villagers are being pulled here. VortiX knows very well that this tower is going to be a disaster if it stays up. He's going to try and take it down. Looks like he's going to have enough beef over here to burn it down, and indeed, the villagers will fall back. MarineLord is going to try and shield them with this army, but it looks like the horsemen might actually be able to get those villagers, so VortiX is able to retaliate for this one. Some reinforcements are coming in here for MarineLord. He's trying to pick off the spearmen to make sure that his own horsemen won't be killed by those, but he doesn't have spears himself to deal with those horsemen, and in the end, it looks like most of these forces are getting cleaned up. I think one of the villagers is gone, but the other one is still running back home, so at least MarineLord saves one out of the two forward villagers here. Speaking of which, there goes the second villager, so I might have just jinxed that will out there. And it looks like VortiX is now back on track. He is forced to add some farms, however, which is a little surprising given the fact that there is so much food to work with. Yeah, you see, there is berries, there is hunt over there, and he's once again going in for the walls. But even if he is unsuccessful making those walls out there, if he was like this, he would still have access to the hunt. So it's a little surprising that he's adding so many farms at the beginning. Of course, the Aachen Chapel is going to help quite a lot with that. So he's going to get the return from those farm investments a lot faster using the Aachen Chapel's influence. But still, it's a little surprising that we're seeing so many farms being added for a player that still has so much food available to work with. Meanwhile, for MarineLord, he's piling up food and gold as well. He is mining stone, so it's a possibility that he goes for Castle Age first, and only after that he goes for a second TC potentially. It's a possibility that he's just going to keep piling up stone and just use that for potentially some defensive emplacements on towers, because he's not really mining a lot more than this. Technically, Song Dynasty is an option as well, but if MarineLord wanted to go for Song Dynasty, he would be building the Imperial Academy by now. So I'm suspecting that this is a straight Castle Age from him. There is a counterattack being launched by the Horsemen of VortiX here, but I don't think that's going to inflict a ton of casualties, especially with the Barbican of the Sun so well positioned, the town center is so close. Indeed, VortiX, for the time being, calls off this assault. VortiX himself is not far away from Castle though, so the two players will be going into Castle Age head to head, and that's where we will have to look at the relics, which are actually quite favorable for VortiX. This relic in the middle is difficult to access, but this relic on the right side, that's an easy one for VortiX. This relic is an easy one for him. So it's gonna come down to probably this one. And that's the reason why he's trying to wall off the left side like that. He knows fully well that this relic up north is pretty much inaccessible. It would be a surprise if MarineLord let him capture that. So it's probably going to come down to either of these two in the southeastern side of the map. But I think it's more legitimate for VortiX to try and get this one, because in the middle area, your opponent usually has an army, so it's very difficult to capture this one over here. We got some blue dots moving in on the right side, so let's keep an eye out over there, because indeed there is a counterattack being launched by MarineLord. Only a handful of horsemen, so it shouldn't be able to do much, but one thing that it's very useful for is intercepting prelates. And you see MarineLord is sending those units to the right side. He's doing this. And the reason why he's doing that is because he knows that his opponent is going up to Castle Age, so this is the window in which VortiX is sending out his prelates. And he's going to utilize that fact as the prelate just gently glides to the right side. He's going to utilize that fact to just try and intercept some of those prelates, delay the opponent's relic grabbing process. Looks like we're going to see some palace guards coming in here, the usual unit composition for the French? No, MarineLord is a French player, but he's playing with the Chinese right now. Looks like the relic is about to get picked up. Horsemen harassing that monk quite a bit as the first couple of palace guards are moving in. And it looks like we're going to have the palace guards starting to slaughter villagers up north. You do have a prelate being intercepted. And guess what? VortiX is off from gold without a single relic. The HRE eco is an absolute juggernaut, especially if you have the relics in the Regnitz Cathedral. But without it, it's quite weak, to be honest. Of course, you still have the Aachen Chapel, but most of the economy power for the Holy Roman Empire comes from the Regnitz Cathedral. And without those relics, VortiX is going to be in serious trouble, especially given the fact that the palace guards are just rampaging his eco right now. He's getting so many villagers killed left and right here. You see, at this point, MarineLord is pursuing those vills, and VortiX is just scrambling for defense. VortiX could try to go for his own men-at-arms, but keep in mind that the palace guards do have a mobility advantage here. So the palace guards being so mobile allow them to just chase down villagers, and part of the reason why they're such an effective unit is that the Chinese players don't mind having less armor, but one thing that the palace guards are very useful for is chasing down those fleeing villagers. VortiX has one relic under his control right now. He's bringing that back as we speak, and he's trying to just rebuild his economy here, or at least readjust the villagers. He's down to 34 villas as opposed to 45 from MarineLord, so quite significant losses out there as he's making a run for it with the prelate. I do think that MarineLord's palace guards will once again try to get some kills on that prelate that's coming back. Volo attempt coming in here from VortiX trying to convert that palace guard, but it looks like the palace guard is going to take down the monk out there, which means that once again VortiX will be left without a relic. Palace guards rampaging the food eco of VortiX as well. It looks like he didn't notice that there is so many attack notifications going off all across the map that he had no idea about those berry villagers being killed. And as things stand, his entire eco is now a train wreck. He's down to 29 villagers with 0 relics. Those palace guards just keep trickling in, and at this point VortiX is just unable to build an army that's capable of fighting that off. He's got 2 stables, but he doesn't have food to make knights. He's trying to get some horsemen going, but horsemen won't trade that well against the palace guards. And at this point, VortiX's eco will just face more and more pressure. MarineLord will just keep sending in wave after wave of palace guards, knowing that his opponent has to fight them off wave after wave. And every once in a while, he's able to pick up some villager kills, weakening the opponent's economy more and more. And once again, that prelate is getting killed on the south. VortiX is trying to scramble for those voles, and he might be able to get those up. But once again, a couple of palace guards will get in from the north, and they're going for the berries. It looks like the palace guards will be denied on the left side, but on the gold mines, VortiX is losing his villagers. He's addressing one problem, and he's just facing 5 more new problems as he's addressing that one. That's basically the summary over here. He finished that wall, but in exchange he's now losing the berry villagers, he just lost the gold miners, and everywhere we look, VortiX is losing villagers. He's down to 16, MarineLord has a massive eco lead at this point, and even with the relics of the Holy Roman Empire, there is just no room for recovery. VortiX tried to go for the Spearman aggression in Dark Age, but the key story here was that MarineLord was just able to get Castle Age units on the battlefield a little faster. If you think about it, the two players got to Castle Age at approximately the same time. The key difference was that MarineLord was able to get to 10, 15 Palace Guards when VortiX didn't really have a ton of army. And with that, MarineLord wins the neutral map. He's going to take a victory here with Chinese, a civilization that now has a very much outstanding win rate in the tournament. In fact, I think it's one of the highest win rate civilization right now. So VortiX will lose his own HRE. He tried something out of the box, I would say, with this Dark Age aggression, and it almost worked. I think the only problem that VortiX had with this Dark Age aggression was that against Chinese, it's not going to work that well. Well, it depends. It could work depending on how exposed that mill is. If the mill is very exposed, it works really well. If it's not exposed, it doesn't work at all. And the bigger question, I would say, is how fast you can get your spearmen to the opponent's base, because that's going to determine whether or not your opponent is already building the Barbican of the Sun close to the mill or not. With that being said, we now have MarineLord up one game against his opponent on Altai. And now we will head to the first home map of VortiX. Welcome back to MarineLord versus VortiX. We are going into game number 2 in an Abbasid mirror. In the blue colors is MarineLord, and in a red we will have VortiX. MarineLord is starting off on the left side of the map, and on the right side we will have VortiX. And if I'm not mistaken, the map is going to be high view. We have so many stealth forests out here that I would be surprised if this was anything different, and we will soon see that once we see the entire map revealed. On the right side, as I said, is VortiX. On the left side is going to be MarineLord. Abbasid mirrors a civilization matchup that you don't commonly see, and you probably associate this civilization matchup as a result of certain mind games. We've talked about this in the previous days. The French is a very popular open map civilization, and many people try to counterpick that with the Abbasid dynasty. So maybe both players thought, hey, my opponent could possibly pick French. I will try to counterpick that with Abbasids, and the result is going to be a potential Abbasid mirror. That is exactly what we're going to see here. Now, there is a couple of stories to tell about Abbasid mirrors. One of the things to talk about is that usually when Abbasids play on open maps like this one, they play 2 town centers into an early castle age, try to go for men-at-arms. Now, this is not going to be this clear for this game, because here's the deal. When you're playing a mirror, you're always trying to find a way to get an advantage over the opponent. And in many ways, in an Abbasid mirror, that advantage could come from an extra town center. So some players are motivated to add the 3rd town center because they know the opponent will be playing on 2, I might as well play on 3. Now, of course, if the other player just focuses on Castle Age after the 2nd town center, he is going to beat the opponent to Castle, and he's going to have a window to do damage. The question is, if one player goes for a fast castle, and the other one goes for the 3rd town center, how fast the player having the 3rd town center can get to Castle Age. Because this is going to determine whether or not he's capable of defending off the Castle Age units of the other player. In regards of unit compositions, it's actually going to be very similar to what you could see in a Mongols mirror. If you think about that, both players or both civilizations, Mongols and Abbasids, love to play with their men-at-arms, they love to play with their crossbows, they're able to build siege weapons on the battlefield. So in terms of unit compositions, this will be very similar to a Mongol mirror, and it looks like the map is actually Lipany here. You see that there is quite a lot of cliffs over there, so I got tricked by the stealth forest, it is Lipany. And with Lipany having so many berries, you see berry patches all across the map. 3 over here in this corner, there's a 4th one, 5th one, 5 berry patches per player. Part of the reason why Abbasid is a popular choice here is because this is an absolute berry heaven. No surprise on the horizon, there is going to be economy wing for both players. And in terms of stone mining, neither of the players are mining stone just yet. Although, of course, we could still see either of them dropping a mining camp. And if I'm not mistaken, VortiX is doing just that, sending those villagers to the north. Indeed, he's going to start mining stone. For the time being, it's only 3 villagers over there, but I would expect him to add some more, because 3 would take quite a lot of time to gather the stone he needs for a potential second town center. Meanwhile, on the other side, it looks like we're going to have no villagers sent towards stone. MarineLord stone is at the back, so is the one from VortiX, so neither of those stone mines are exposed, and now MarineLord is sending his own vills. So you gotta have the boom fest going over here, because neither of these players will make a ton of army at the beginning. Fresh foodstuffs upgrade coming in for both players. VortiX a couple seconds faster to Feudal Age compared to his opponent. The difference is very minimal, so this is really not something that influences the game. And it looks like MarineLord is pulling away all the villagers from gold, so he has gathered enough for the fresh foodstuffs upgrade. He's going to grab it, and from that point on, it's all about that stone mining, all about that lumberjacking. The only difference between the two players' build orders right now is that MarineLord is grabbing the wheelbarrow upgrade, which is an upgrade I really love. So I do think that's a great thing for him to pick up, but it's probably going to delay his second town center a tiny bit. Currently, VortiX is at 150 stone. As I said, he's going to have that second town center up a little faster. And now we'll have to talk about where exactly you would place that town center, because that's a big question. So, the first thing to note is that the gold mines are absolutely horrendous for VortiX. If you look at his base, he's got one gold mine up front over here. The 2 backup gold mines are on the right side, and there is nothing at the back. This means that he needs to find a way to protect that gold mine. Given the fact that there is also forest nearby, I would think that the easiest way of doing this is placing the town center over here, in between the wood and the gold, because that would protect both, and that's exactly what VortiX is doing. This way he's going to have protection for his primary gold mine, and he's also going to have access to the wood. Meanwhile, for MarineLord, his gold mines are also absolutely horrific if you look at their positions on the minimap. And VortiX is going to be surprised when he sees the town center location of MarineLord. MarineLord is moving very far out of his base for that TC. I was just about to say that protecting these gold mines is going to be a little tricky over here. You see, these are the gold mines that MarineLord can work with. Neither of those are good. But pushing up a town center so far away could be quite risky. Instead, what MarineLord does is placing the town center on the hunt, which is a common thing to do. Basically, when you're playing multiple town centers, your biggest need is going to be food. If your biggest need is food, you might as well place your town centers on hunts. This is not so important for the abysses because, of course, they're not consuming a ton of food thanks to the fresh foodstuffs upgrade, but for other civilizations, that's a factor to consider. Now, it looks like both players are mining stone, which means that we're not stopping at 2 town centers for either. It looks like we're gonna have 3, and currently both players are building Sim City, so just to join the fun, I'm also going to draw a town for you over here. Okay. That's exactly what the players are doing. For a completely photorealistic representation, this is what the players are doing right now. But there's actually one positive thing about this one, and that's going to be the pace and the rate of escalation. Because what it means to have 3 town centers is that both players will build up a juggernaut economy in the next 2 or 3 minutes. In 3 minutes of time, we are going to have, I'll do the math, 27 extra villagers for both players, if my math is correct. So the economies will increase quite rapidly, and that's soon going to translate into massive armies on the battlefield. So, because the ecos skyrocket like that, you're going to see armies being built quite rapidly, and I think at like minute 11 or 12, we'll be looking into quite significant armies appearing on the battlefield. Both players now piling up food for Castle Age. They're sending villagers to golds, which is a sign that we are going to have the gold mining operations begin, and with that the plans towards Castle Age also being designed. Looks like the first player to drop a military production building is going to be MarineLord. He's dropping an archer range as we speak. We could see some camel archers, which would be an interesting addition here from MarineLord. It would be interesting because it's an expensive unit, but it's also something that has quite a lot of mobility, and it's something that could harass the opponent quite heavily, and indeed MarineLord thinks the same. He's going to have a camel archer come in. It's not like his main force will be camel archers by any means, but one thing that he could do with this is sort of use it as if it was a Khan of the Mongols. One of the things that you do with your Khan when you're playing Mongols is just keep harassing the opponent left and right. And you can do something similar with the camel archer here. Just send one in, keep harassing those villagers, and that's going to be annoying for your opponent. You're trying to get some sort of advantage, force your opponent to be idle, and you see he's sending it out, trying to probe that hunt and the berries, because he knows fully well that if the opponent has zero army, he can force the opponent off from the berries. It's a big investment to make a camel archer, but it can pay off really easily if it is able to force the opponent off from the berries, and that's exactly what you're seeing here from MarineLord. He's going to push away the opponent from the berries, and you see that it looks like VortiX wasn't really expecting this type of an approach over here because he's dropping a barracks, which means that he's not going to have a direct answer to that camel archer, and here it goes. It's going to be the villagers being pushed back to the town center. VortiX will have to relocate them, but guess what? The camel archer has high mobility, so if MarineLord is playing this smart and he sees his opponent leave the berries, he should probe the other berries, because at some point the players will expand towards those locations, and indeed, that's what he's doing, probing the other berries over here. He's accompanying that one camel archer with a scout, which will give him a lot more vision, and that's one of the key things here. Because this way, it's much easier for that camel archer to avoid enemy town center fire, much easier for that camel archer to find targets to kill, and it looks like we're going to have a second archer range being dropped by MarineLord. For now, he's harassing the villagers out there, and he's at the risk of losing that scout. He loses the scout to the town center fire, and indeed he does. For a brief moment, it seemed like he was gonna get away, but it was likely that the town center gets one more volley out before the scout escapes, and in the end, you see that scout being taken down. That's a painful loss for MarineLord, but he still has the camel archer, and remember that not only is he harassing the berries, 2 of the gold mines right now are being denied by just a single camel archer. Of course, it's not very difficult for VortiX to kill it, but VortiX did not want to add any army right now, and that means that that camel archer is actually going to get a pretty nice return for its investment. 58 versus 58 is the villager count, dead even on that department, and it looks like VortiX is going to play mass spearmen here, because you see that the phalanx upgrade is coming in, he's grabbing the veteran spears, he's also dropping men-at-arms, and I guess the idea is going to be mass infantry and then just mass siege. So basically he just wants to wipe out the opponent's archers, like play 6, 7, 8 springolds, 4 mangonels, and then full infantry. It's a little risky because you pretty much live and die with the amount of siege that you have, but it could work out. You see, MarineLord is taking a completely different approach. He's got archer ranges and stables here, 3 ranges, 1 stable. He's expecting men-at-arms, which is something that you can expect from Abbasids at this stage, reacting preemptively with the the crossbowman. Looks like a camel archer finally gets taken down. He was able to pick off 1 villager, but he failed to pick off another one. So really the only villager difference between the 2 players is coming from that villager kill. Range defense upgrade coming in for both players. You see men-at-arms spearmen now being added by VortiX in large quantities. Of course, with the Abbasids, you don't need to research anything to be able to make siege weapons on the battlefield, which will be helpful. But the thing that I like in MarineLord's position more is that he has a stable, and he's adding lancers. And if you look at how the berry deposits look like on the map, having mobility on this map is extremely important. Because even just 1 lancer hitting these berry patches, either right now or in the future, could be immensely valuable. So I get the feel that MarineLord having a couple of lancers in his army and having the ability to raid the opponent's berries could be immensely important. Whereas for VortiX, he's going to be lacking mobility, and that could haunt him for the rest of the game. Now, his straight-up army is going to be quite powerful. As you see, the first Lancer is just now moving out. VortiX will see that, so he knows that Lancers are coming. But right now, the problem for MarineLord is that his numbers aren't spectacular, and what's more concerning is that, first of all, he loses that scout. Second, his crossbows won't be able to hold off the spears. Those will be fine against the men-at-arms, but holding off the spearmen will be a different story here. MarineLord trying to rush up some walls over here to limit the movement of the opponent. Moderately successful, he gets the wall up, but the villager is going to get pushed back to the wood line. Crossbows open up against the men-at-arms, And with that, the Man-at-Arms will get forced back, both Man-at-Arms getting taken down. And it looks like MarineLord is going to use this relatively peaceful period to start picking up relics over here. And here's the first Lancer. And as I said, even if you don't kill a ton of villagers, this is horribly frustrating. And when you have big battles in the middle, your opponent might even be distracted and he might not even notice that his villagers are getting killed. And indeed, that sort of seemed to be the case over here. VortiX's reaction was a little slow, and you see he's trying to pull the villagers back, but when the knight charges in and then delivers a swing with the sword, that's going to kill a villager in 2 hits. If it's only sword hits, that's going to take 3 hits to kill that villager, but as you see, charge plus sword is going to be killing that villager in 2, and with that, MarineLord was able to pick up 3 or 4 villager kills there for a price of basically 1 knight, and he still has the knights alive. Range defense upgrade level 2 already in for VortiX, and he's grabbing the melee attack upgrade. Whereas for MarineLord, he's just now grabbing the second range defense upgrade. So upgrades are slightly better here for MarineLord, or excuse me, VortiX actually. But on the other side, you see VortiX keeps losing villagers to those knights, and that's horribly frustrating. Not only is the fact that he's losing a single villager over here at this point to 1 knight coming in, when he has town centers and military nearby, the more frustrating thing here actually is the fact that a lot of those villagers are idle and you just have to address this problem, which leaves you less time to focus on your actual army, building those siege weapons. Now it looks like VortiX's army is hiding in the stealth forest, and remember, MarineLord lost his scout, so it's going to be difficult for him to spot the opponent. And here's where this gets very scary for both sides. That stealth forest in the middle is going to be a perfect thing to use for ambushes. And considering that both players here have military that's mostly infantry and siege, mangonel ambushes could be devastating. It looks like it is VortiX who's charging into this one, and as I said, one thing that the enemy MarineLord doesn't have is a response to mass spears, and VortiX is going to utilize this to take down one of the Springolds. The second Springold goes down, and he's committed to taking down the third one, also tries to retaliate for previous villager losses. He feels the blood in the water. He's realizing that while the crossbows are good to take down the men-at-arms, they'll be terrible at taking down all those spears, and it is the mass spears that's working so well here for VortiX. He's starting to slay the villagers here for MarineLord, but the bigger thing is that the Springolds are still alive, which means that even if there was a mangonel here for MarineLord, he wouldn't be able to use it. The Springolds will just take down the Scholar over there, and with that, the Vololo is going to fail as well. Crossbow numbers still quite high, and you don't have a mangonel on the battlefield right now for VortiX, so that is his saving grace, I would say. VortiX needs to get that mangonel on the battlefield, and then MarineLord is going to be in trouble. I wonder where that mangonel went, because you had a mangonel here for VortiX. For now, it looks like MarineLord is going to be able to hold this position, but he needs to find a way to deal with the spearmen, because the crossbows will take down the men-at-arms, but not the spears. Speaking of mangonels, here comes VortiX, and he started building those mangonels a long time ago. I think he accidentally selected the units that were building them, and he pulled them into the battle. So because of that, those mangonels never got finished. This actually gives a window for MarineLord to get back on track with the army. But the thing that's really concerning here for MarineLord is that there is literally no answer to mass spears. His crossbows will be fine against the men-at-arms, but there is quite a lot of spears to deal with as well. Nice counterattack here by MarineLord. Once again, VortiX is being haunted by the fact that MarineLord is just trickling in those knights. Those are actually the knights that are left over from the previous raids. You can see that they are damaged. They are the knights that fought before. And it looks like here comes the push here from VortiX, and MarineLord is going to have to address this. MarineLord coming in with his own mangonel. That's a beautiful volley of rocks on the spearman. Springolds now push up from VortiX, trying to take down that mangonel, and right now the siege numbers are heavily in the favor of VortiX, and siege numbers usually decide the battles in these Abbasid mirrors. Both of the Springolds from MarineLord fall, and now VortiX is pushing deeper and deeper over here. 3 mangonels, 6 Springolds, and what's most concerning here for MarineLord is that there's also a ton of spearmen. Now town centers are under fire. MarineLord is gonna have to just sort of use that town center as a buffer. He has 104 villagers, he can afford to lose 1 town center, but he needs time to build up his army. But it's 76 military population for VortiX, 41 for MarineLord. 1 town center gets burned to the ground. You could potentially see the monastery getting burned down, potentially even the house nearby. For now, MarineLord is just buying himself time. This is his POV as you take a look. And as things stand, he's still sitting at 2 Springolds, 2 mangonels. He needs to buy himself time to build those siege numbers up. His crossbows are looking healthy, but the problem is that, as I said, if he doesn't have enough springolds, he's going to be unable to snipe down those mangonels, and those mangonels are now taking down the starting TC, I do believe. So now MarineLord is on a serious timer because it's the starting town center that's being fired upon. Looks like there is 2 mangonels here for MarineLord, so he will be able to force back the infantry. And behind this one, VortiX keeps losing villagers to those knights. That's MarineLord's only saving grace, really. He's been killing villagers left and right with those units. Now the springolds are rolling up. MarineLord knows fully well that he can't take this fight. It looks like we are going to have the springolds opening up with volleys against each other. And now MarineLord is pulling villagers. He knows very well that he needs to get some sort of siege advantage here. He needs to sacrifice some villagers to take down some siege potentially. Mangonos, however, is so close to the town center here for VortiX. And he's about to burn down this starting TC over here. And after that, it's only the House of Wisdom left to go, and you still don't see the army here for MarineLord being able to stop this one. Starting TC gone, MarineLord adding some cavalry, and it looks like MarineLord is now tempted to fight this one. It's now or never for MarineLord. He's crawling up with his own siege. The springolds will trade arrows over here, but it looks like for now, VortiX is going to call off his forces. He doesn't want to risk losing his entire army over here. He feels like he has done enough damage, and he will retreat, at least for the time being. Or will he? He's turning back to fight. The springolds are shooting back on the forces of MarineLord. MarineLord now has the springold number advantage, and this is something that could help him take down all those mangonels, and that's indeed the case over here. Mangonels now getting snapped down by the crossbows and the springolds. Looks like VortiX is gonna be able to save his army, and you might even get the mangonels to stay alive. Reinforcements are coming in here for VortiX, however. It's still 84 army versus 43. And the next wave could be very difficult for MarineLord to hold off. Here comes the next wave of springolds, and you could see for a brief moment that inside the base of VortiX, there was dozens of units. They were sent to clean up the knights, but they were never really addressed. You see, they're just now being scrambled onto the battlefield, and they will be welcome reinforcements, because if they arrive onto the battlefield, the army numbers are heavily favoring VortiX. VortiX at 200 population with one of the most ineffective gold mining operations we have seen in this tournament. MarineLord currently sitting at 56. He's got some siege going and he's now adding some horsemen, but his opponent still has a lot of spears to deal with, so I'm not exactly sure if horsemen is going to work out over here. We'll have to see. The horsemen will be useful to snap down mangonels, however. The springolds will trade volleys against each other, as it looks like the first wave of cavalry from MarineLord gets wiped out. Town center was repaired by MarineLord. He still keeps repairing it, but that is not a fully repaired town center at this point. And it looks like now VortiX is committing. He was trying to dive in on that mangonel. The mangonel gets away with low HP. And here come the reinforcements. Suddenly, the army numbers are looking pretty healthy. So healthy that you could potentially consider rushing down those crossbows. The springolds of VortiX do take down the mangonel here from MarineLord. As another springold is being built on the battlefield. VortiX's springolds are left unguarded, however, so the horsemen could potentially take it down. Looks like MarineLord's horseman numbers are steadily growing, and this could be an interesting problem to deal with for VortiX. He doesn't have mobility, so if MarineLord decides to counterattack, that could be difficult to deal with. We could already see VortiX struggling with counterattacks over here, but right now he's burning down the starting town center of the opponent, and he's about to jump on that House of Wisdom, and you get the feel that MarineLord knows that he cannot fight this one, so he will just try to launch a counterattack. But MarineLord has to fight this. He's trying to intercept reinforcements for the time being, but MarineLord will have to take that army down because he needs to keep that House of Wisdom alive. House of Wisdom currently at 70% HP, mangonels will open up against it. I really wonder when MarineLord is thinking about taking this fight. VortiX is playing this one cautious, and here comes MarineLord. He's trying to sandwich this army between two groups of horsemen. Loses one mangonel to the horseman is VortiX, and now you're going to have the crossbows pushing up as well. Crossbows do a ton of damage against siege weapons as well, but of course you do have to juke those mangonel shots. Horsemen from MarineLord fail to take down the second mangonel, and with that, the mangonel fire stands strong, wiping out most of those crossbowmen out there. Another volley comes out, and most of the crossbowmen are now heavily damaged or killed. Lying down on the battlefield is a group of crossbowmen, and if you look at VortiX's army, it's still as healthy as it could possibly be. Horsemen once again assembling for MarineLord to try and launch a push on those siege weapons. But MarineLord is just constantly pushed to the edge of the map over here. His town center is burning still. Once again, cavalry charge coming in here, but the spearmen are shielding those siege weapons very effectively. And with the phalanx upgrade for the Abbasids, they also reach those horsemen much easier. MarineLord is still doing the right thing here, coming in from multiple directions with the horsemen, trying to jump on the siege weapons. He's going to take down a mangonel on the right side. He's taking out the second mangonel as well, so the springboards stay alive for VortiX, but the mangonels are now gone. The problem now for MarineLord is different. He only has a handful of crossbows here, and the army for VortiX now is almost exclusively spearmen. Horsemen and crossbows won't beat spearmen, so suddenly this becomes just a numbers game of military units on the battlefield, independent of the siege pretty much. MarineLord doesn't have any mangonels himself to try and take down those spearmen with, so he will just find himself being overrun by spears over here. MarineLord is launching a counterattack, and that could be threatening to the eco of VortiX. That's about 15 horsemen going all the way through the map. VortiX indeed is going to have to address this one, as his gold miners are being killed. At least he's going to realize that he needs a new mining camp over there, and indeed he places it as we speak. Inside the base of MarineLord, VortiX is once again preparing a push. Steadily at 190 to 200 population is VortiX, whereas for MarineLord, now he's down to 137. I think he's slowly running out of resources. He's out of gold, which means that he's not going to be able to add lancers over here. Part of the reason why he's adding so many horsemen is because of that. But he's now low on food as well. Many of his villagers were killed, or they're just idle because they ran out of berries. And you see, there is basically no farming eco set up here for MarineLord, which basically means that he's going to have no sustainable food economy, and he doesn't really have the time window right now to add it. House of Wisdom now under fire, down to 9,000 HP. MarineLord is gonna have to take a fight over here, but I'm really unsure if he can even do that. There is no battering ram here for VortiX, and I feel like 1 or 2 battering rams would help a lot, taking down that landmark a lot faster. The starting TC isn't fully repaired, by the way, so it is, I think, still counted as a destroyed landmark, despite the fact that it's somewhat repaired. But I'll have to check my math on that. Here comes the last hurrah here, potentially, from MarineLord. He's got some archers in the army, which makes it much easier to deal with those spears. But there's a mangonel lining up, and MarineLord taps out. He knows that he's not gonna win that fight. I think he saw the mangonel, and he also saw his archers clustered up. It wasn't even just one mangonel. It was 3 mangonels, in fact, from VortiX. And VortiX pushed deep into the base of MarineLord. It's a little difficult to tell where this slipped for MarineLord because he was doing such a good job with the cavalry raiding. But I think the idea was that VortiX was able to translate his eco numbers to army numbers a little faster. And it's all about that. He was able to gain some momentum, start pushing his opponent, and from that point on, MarineLord always had to respond. MarineLord was sometimes forced to take some ineffective engagements, simply because his opponent forced him to do so. Otherwise, MarineLord would have lost his town center and the House of Wisdom. And ultimately, it just ended up being a snowball because VortiX's eco, while it was harassed by horsemen, ultimately he didn't suffer from a massive amount of damage. Whereas for MarineLord, he lost 2 town centers. Let's not forget that. He lost the second town center he added, and he also lost the starting town center. So he was low on town center numbers, although he didn't really need to replace villagers. But I think the key problem was that he ran out of gold, and I think he also ran out of food for some time because the berries ran out, and he didn't really have a farming eco set up. And ultimately, VortiX was able to take this game with the momentum that he built up. And now, it's an even scoreline. Abbasids is going to be taken away from both players, but VortiX is the one marching away with a victory here. A very important victory, and this is only the second game that MarineLord has lost. MarineLord lost an Arabia game against Beasties, so it looks like some of the open maps he's definitely vulnerable on. But as I said, MarineLord still stands strong. We're at an even scoreline right now, and we'll be taking a look at game number 3 on the home map of MarineLord. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 3 in this best of 5 between MarineLord and VortiX. We are going to the first home map of MarineLord over here. We will have him playing as the Rus in blue on the left side, and on the right side we will have VortiX playing as the Mongols in red. Mongols versus Rus, a traditional civilization matchup of Mongolian heights over here. A matchup where the Rus player wants to build a dock and a Mongol player wants to burn it down. The equation is this simple. Now here's the trick. Even if you burn down that dock, the Rus will still be able to fish. So this is where things are getting interesting. any other civilization that wanted to fish over here, the Mongols, if they burn down the dock, the fishing ships become inefficient. On the other hand, for the Rus, of course, they are able to get quite a lot of value from their fishing vessels, even if the dock is burnt down. The other thing to consider, and this is a very important consideration over here, is that with the Mongols, if you want to deny the hunt from the opponent, like talk about the bounty, especially the deer bounty, you're probably going to be in the need of an extra scout. Because you can aggro the wolves with your Khan, as we are seeing VortiX do, but as you will see, he needs to shoot 3 arrows towards every single deer to be able to kill it. A scout only takes 2 hits to kill a deer, whereas the Khan needs 3. So it takes much more time for VortiX to kill a lot of deer here, and that's going to make it much more easier for MarineLord to pick up those bounty spots, because it's going to take a lot more time for VortiX to kill those deer if he doesn't have a scout over here. And you see, this is exactly what we're seeing over here. Bit of a scout dancing up north, trying to find for those predators, and of course the deer. Looks like we're going to have a bit of a fight for a wolf, and I think MarineLord got the final arrow into that. We don't see his current bounty count, but if I had to predict, it would be in the range of, yeah, we're now seeing it, so I'm not even going to predict, but it's indeed at 115, 125. He was successful taking down 1 patch of hunt. He has his own patch still, and he aggroed 1 wolf on the right side, so he should be on course towards 250. In fact, if he takes down this entire patch of huntables, it's very possible he gets to 300, which would be a great start for him. Meanwhile, VortiX doesn't have to sweat about this one, to be honest, because he was rather successful gathering sheep. That is 14 sheep that he's going to be able to work with, and now we're seeing some vows being placed over here by MarineLord. He's trying to prevent the Mongols from crossing over here, but the spearmen do arrive to the battlefield, and that is 2 villagers being pulled as well that will probably be sent towards a tower project here. The question is if the tower is coming up on the dock to try and kill the fishing ships, or straight on the opponent's eco. Now, you don't really want to tower the gold mine of the Rus, because the Rus won't be mining a ton of gold at the beginning. Instead, you're trying to target their lumberjacks, because that's the prime spot. You target the lumberjacks, you're going to make it very difficult for your opponent to even make fishing ships. And keep in mind that the Rus will be fine getting gold from the bounty and then the golden gate. So towering the gold mine doesn't make a ton of sense here for the Mongol player, and indeed VortiX is coming in with a tower rush. He's looking for those lumberjacks, and now he spots the wood line. He's going to place that tower to the left of that wood line, which would also deny the stone mine. Indeed, here it goes. And it's a little more difficult for the Rus to react to this, actually, because in order for Rus to make a counter tower, they need to invest a lot more wood. So it's going to be difficult for MarineLord to counter tower this. I wonder if he even sees that tower. He should be able to see it. And looking at his POV, actually he doesn't see it. You can see on the minimap he has no idea about it. He has no idea about that tower coming up. Now, I'm fairly certain he saw the villagers coming forward, and generally speaking, playing against the Mongols, you would expect your opponent to potentially try and tower you, but it seems like he wasn't really prepared for that tower coming up to the left of his wood line, and now he's going to send the villagers to the right. Second tower will follow up here for VortiX, that's not even a question, and now we're seeing some spearmen being sent forward to burn down the docks. Of course, VortiX is playing with a ton of Dark Age pressure over here, trying to make sure that he's cutting off the opponent from the wood, and I wouldn't be surprised to see VortiX trying to go for Fast Castle, but it's also possible that he will just try to go for his own dock upon hitting Feudal Age, and just trying to sink those fishing ships with a light chunk or so. Golden Gate on the way as we speak for MarineLord, whereas on the other side, no Feudal Age on the horizon for VortiX, of course. He has invested into a ton of spearmen, so obviously that is going to delay his Feudal Age quite a bit. This tower is going to be cancelled for the time being, as the villagers are being harassed by the scout. One of those villas is actually rather low HP, so it's possible that MarineLord might be able to kill that villager before the tower goes up. And the Khan isn't doing a ton of damage in Dark Age to the horseman, or, well, not even to the scout. Basically, the Khan isn't doing a lot of damage to anything in Dark Age, but in particular against the scout, that's going to get healed up anyways, is doing minimal damage, so you can't really prevent that scout from killing that villager. Looks like it is going to be the scout called back home for MarineLord because he saw the spearmen coming, so he didn't want to risk losing his scout at this point. Dock was burned down, but of course the fishing ships are still operational, and that's going to be a key element of gameplay here for MarineLord, because obviously quite a significant portion of his food eco is built around that. He's at 280 bounty right now. He's got some sheep to make it 300, 325 potentially, but that's the level of bounty that he's going to be able to operate with. The question is what exactly he's going to do over here, because normally the Rus try to play either water pressure, try to cut off the enemy from crossing the river, and then sort of playing a fast castle style build. Khan is gonna get picked off by the town center. You see that he ran into the town center fire for a brief moment, tried to escape, but then just got picked off by the town center's volley out here. Nice reaction by MarineLord, and it looks like we're seeing some archers come up, and I love this counterattack. This is a clever thing to do, a very clever thing to do, especially being accompanied by the scouts. Because the one archer will be able to pick off the spears, and one thing that you can do with those two scouts is start burning down the Ovu. In fact, it would be a clever thing to do for MarineLord to add one or two more scouts from the hunting cabin, and basically play a scouts plus archers unit composition, something that we saw Mista use against the Mongols playing as the French. And you could just use your hunting cabin to make scouts, so you don't need to use the town center for it. And your archer will be able to protect it from the spearmen, and you can just burn down the Ovu, burn down the barracks. VortiX is now up to feudal age, so he can think about his own archer range. And of course, we're now seeing the arrow slits emplacement placed on all of those towers out there. MarineLord readjusting his forces to the right side. Looks like he's also getting a potential kill on a wolf, which would be a great value over here at this point. That's 25 gold that he could pick up. Looks like the villagers are shifting to the right side for the time being. That's actually a well-protected wood line, and indeed, we're going to have MarineLord picking up the 25 bounty for that wolf. He was trying to burn down the Ovu, and now you see that this tower is going up here, but that's not going to do much. And VortiX either works all the way around that cliff to drop the new tower, or he could potentially try chopping through, because there might be a thin layer that he can chop through. Meanwhile, you're going to have a stable being dropped by VortiX over here. Defensive tower preemptively placed over here by MarineLord. But the bigger thing is that he's about to intercept those villagers. The villagers ventured a little far away from that town center. And we're going to have the archers at least pushing them back into that tower. You see, MarineLord basically abandoned his starting base. He's not taking his sheep because he's got the fishing eco. He's not taking his initial wood line, as it looks like he might be able to yoink a scout here from the opponent. I do think that he finished off that scout, and after that he runs away from the spears. And, well, our observer isn't going to show that to us. Instead, he's showing the Khan that has taken quite a lot of damage. Looks like VortiX will be able to keep that scout alive for the time being. Hardened spearmen getting picked off by the archers. And you gotta wonder if those villagers were spotted, because if they were, the archers could just be sent there once again to clean them up. And it looks like MarineLord is still adding fishing eco. He's realizing that VortiX is basically applying no pressure to the water, so he can get away with as greedy of a fishing eco as it could be possible. And it looks like indeed MarineLord is thinking that there is probably going to be a tower coming up. He actually sees the tower, hasn't reacted to it just yet. Now he's going to send the archers and the scouts over there. That's the end of the story for that tower rush. That's going to be 2 dead villagers for VortiX. And while he is banking up resources for Castle Age, you get the feel that MarineLord is likely beating him to Castle, because MarineLord almost has the gold he needs, and of course he's got a Juggernaut food eco coming in from the fishing. Looks like Khan is going to get away this time around from the tower, barely surviving with low HP. And there is just no units to escort those villagers anymore, so they can run away from the archers, but they cannot run away from the scouts. Looks like we're going to see a light jump now by VortiX, so he's realizing that he needs to contest water control. But pushing the Rus on water like this is going to be difficult, because of course the Rus can just adjust the amount of combat vessels they have. If there's a ton of pressure coming, you just quickly convert free fishing boats into combat ships. Villagers and the Khan getting taken down. Looks like the scout is getting away, or is he? The Khan goes down, the scout goes down, 2 villagers goes down, and that's a disaster for VortiX. He's currently at 40 population against 54, just now adding his first combat ships, and you see the Abbey of the Trinity is being placed right now by MarineLord. He knows that he's got the advantage, because he's fully aware that he's got a fishing eco and his opponent doesn't. And he also knows that he just needs to build on this already existing advantage by starting to pick up the relics. There are 2 relics on his side of the river and 3 on the other side. He's sending in the scouts right now to burn down the Ovu. But the big thing here is that it looks like he's also going to find the docks of the opponent, so he's going to be able to preemptively start striking at those. Indeed, there is the Lord attack ship sailing south. This one attack ship is going to be met with 2 light junks. It looks like VortiX tried to conceal his intentions for as long as possible and then just come in with a critical mass of light junks that pretty much sinks all the fishing ships before they can be converted into combat vessels. But that's going to be a little too late. And now I think some of those are being converted, but it's a little tricky to look at. Horsemen appear on the battlefield now. That's going to be quite problematic. And you see now VortiX has a combined assault at 2 positions. Fishing boats are being pulled away. One ship gets converted to combat vessel though. And I do think that there should be enough of a buffer here for our blue player MarineLord to buy himself time to get some more combat ships out. From those fishing ships or from the docks, it doesn't really matter. His lumberjacks are being harassed, which is going to make that project a little more difficult. And MarineLord is losing quite a lot of fishing eco over here. So this is not going to be great at all. But of course, he's slowly repelling those light junks. He could technically think about demolition ships now, but I think he just needs to continue with those Lodya combat ships. And it looks like we are now going to see VortiX having trouble with the food. You see he's basically got no food underneath the town center and he's just now adding pastures. And that's going to be concerning. Because MarineLord basically has infinite food to work with from that river, or at least near infinite. And of course he also has the sheep that he hasn't even touched yet. And now he's going out for relics. The Abbey of the Trinity is not training a warrior monk just yet, I believe. I think MarineLord needs a bit of a gold for that. On the other side, we are seeing VortiX piling up the food for Castle Age, but he is still quite low on gold. He just spent all of his gold on those combat ships. And now we have to mention that the Rus get a ton of upgrades for the Lodya combat ships once they get to Castle Age. So those are all the upgrades that he can utilize to buff his navy and make it much more difficult for those feudal age ships from VortiX to take down his navy. That's quite a lot of ships sailing north though, and it looks like those archers will be the recipients of quite a lot of arrow fire. Some of the archers will go down over here. It is going to be, however, 6 combat ships versus 5 light junks. This is a good enough fight for MarineLord. And even if he doesn't like the fight, he can convert 1 or 2 more fishing ships into combat ships. You see the Rus power over here. And now the Rus combat ships are just sailing to the east. Actually, that's the west. We're sailing to the left side of the screen, so we're going left. And that is the west of the direction. We're going to have the light junks getting pushed back for the time being. And the big problem right now for VortiX is that he's still in Feudal Age, when his opponent is in Castle. And you know what that means. It means that the Rus player will start picking up the relics, and that lead is just going to go further and further towards a massive advantage for MarineLord. Looks like pastures are now up for VortiX. His eco is not that much behind, it's 45 to 42 on the worker count, but of course, once the Rus player gets the relics, it's going to be more concerning. And the thing is that, as I said, VortiX is still in Feudal Age, whereas MarineLord is already in Castle Age. Looking at the upgrades, there is also wheelbarrow for VortiX, however, so there is something to compensate with. And as things stand, one of the problems for MarineLord is that the towers are still up in his face, and those are annoying. We've mentioned this multiple times, that there is a constant attack notification going off, and that's going to make you sometimes look over there, get you distracted. And it looks like, look at that, the combination of the push through the shallows and the Lodya combat ships will guarantee that the enemy won't be able to intercept those horsemen and archers crossing the river. So you're going to see a river crossing here with horsemen and archers to try and push the Ovu, and simultaneously you're going to have some Lodya attack ships coming in, and there's a demo as well. Gotta love that demo. You might conceal that among your ships and just try to jump on the opponent, or you could just wait for the enemy forces to cross the shallows. It looks like it's gonna be a concealment. Look at that. Hidden demolition ship here, and this could be big. I don't think that VortiX sees it. Even if he sees it, it's difficult to click. And that demolition ship is now pursuing the light junks. Is it gonna pop? It is going to pop, sinking 1 combat ship here from VortiX. Still, it looks like the numbers are looking better for VortiX, and with the healing ability of the docks, VortiX will be able to repel this from MarineLord. MarineLord doesn't have a ton of Castle Age upgrades on those combat ships, and now MarineLord is in the need of a couple of new Lodya attack ships. Meanwhile, there is some fighting going on the land as well. VortiX is holding this one off. As crazy as it sounds like, he's holding this off with Feudal Age army over here, and he's getting closer and closer to Castle Age. Another demolition ship pops, will sink 2 of the light chunks over here, as we are going to see some new combat ships appear on the battlefield for MarineLord. I think MarineLord is converting most of his fishing eco now to Lodya attack ships. He's realizing that, okay, he has to win the water here, because that is what he needs to control the enemy and prevent him from crossing. On the north, he's got some fortified palisades that prevent crossing, But the other two river crossings are wide open for the enemies to pass. $33 army right now for VortiX, only 19 for his opponent MarineLord, and MarineLord's land unit composition is basically non-existent. He's got Lodya attack ships, and that's basically it. MarineLord has been active picking up relics. He already has 2 relics under his control, and now I see some archer ranges being dropped, so it's possible we're going to see the good old-fashioned horse archer play from the Rus. And you see MarineLord is realizing that he might not be able to win water, so his response to that will just be walling off the crossing with 2 layers of fortified palisade walls and saying, okay, whatever, you can have that part of the river, I will just have the other part. Meanwhile, on the north, you do have a couple of horsemen and spearmen trying to bash their way through the walls, but you gotta respect the fact that anytime MarineLord could send in a demolition ship and sink those, so you always have to keep an eye out for your forces, and I think that's the reason why VortiX is being cautious about this one. He sees the fishing ships there, and the sheer presence of the fishing ships over there is discouraging VortiX from pushing because he never knows if any of those are being converted into demolition ships. We got some raids going on here by MarineLord, and I do think that he found a new Ovu, if I'm not mistaken, because that Ovu should be depleted very soon, and there is something that those horsemen are currently beating up down south. What is that? Right here. It is the new Ovu indeed. Spearmen will react to this one, and with that the horsemen will be repelled. I don't think that they can win a good fight over there. They might be able to take down the spears, but most of them will be taken down. It looks like now the combat ships will sail north. They're realizing that, okay, VortiX is ready to cross, so you're just going to send some Lodya attack ships over there to repel this one. Most of the spearmen are now getting taken down, and it looks like now we're seeing some Vor junks appear on the battlefield. You see additional sails, Vor junks upgrade coming in as well for VortiX, so he's very resilient and he wants to push the water. That group of light junks is extremely scary. That's like 10 light junks out there. And that's a tremendous amount of firepower. It's also very effective taking down demolition ships, which means that it's going to help a lot protecting your own war junks. You're going to need the war junks to get through those walls or potentially some demolition ships, but that's not something that VortiX has right now. Sacred Site right now being captured by MarineLord. He's in a good position right now when it comes to gold income, thanks to the fact that he's got the relics and he's gonna have the sacred sites. Those towers are still annoying MarineLord. Now we're seeing some siege workshops come out, however, so we could finally see a Mangonel or a Trebuchet taking down those towers. MarineLord is very active picking up the relics, by the way. He is now going to be controlling 4 as his opponent is bashing his way through those walls. Additional CS is an upgrade that may have been cancelled over here actually by our Mongol players, so looks like VortiX thought twice about that one. The Khan gets picked off, and at this point, MarineLord's fishing eco is sheltered behind those walls. For the time being, these walls are standing strong. It's double layers, fortified palisade walls, and now you're seeing springboards come up for MarineLord. He knows very well that the springboards now receive the bonus damage versus ships, which means that you can use them as a very good anti-ship unit here. They will outrange even the war junks, despite the fact that the war junks also have a springboard emplacement on them. So they can take down any ship here from the shoreline, and that's exactly what you're seeing over there. It looks like we're going to have one dock taken down by the war junk, but now with the springboards rolling up, you're going to see those ships being pushed back for the time being. Ecos, rather comparable, 63 to 62. In fact, it's probably slightly more effective right now for VortiX with the step redoubt. But of course, on the other hand, MarineLord does have 4 relics, which is nothing to shy away from. He has built a monastery, so he's confident that he's gonna get that 4th one back at home. In fact, he already got it. And for VortiX, we're seeing the siege engineering upgrade come in once again. Horsemen from MarineLord are just looping around. Those are veteran horsemen trying to get that Ovu burnt down. The M speed is helping the horsemen of VortiX and the spearmen, of course, to try and catch up. It looks like the springboards are opening up against that otherwise very expensive war junk. And now, there are some men-at-arms appearing on the battlefield as well for the Rus player. The light junks will open up against them and they will take down some of them. But now, you see the power of those springboards. Looks like VortiX is tempted to take this one, and that's a lot of firepower. Indeed, MarineLord has to back off for a brief moment. He's going to sink one of those light junks, however, and at this point, if he micros his forces carefully, he should be able to keep the distance between himself and the light junks and just take them down from a distance. And now, looks like he's crossing the middle with some men-at-arms. I didn't see a ton of land forces. Oh, the Volo attempt. This could be absolutely gigantic here. MarineLord coming in with the Volo attempt, going off for quite a long time. It looks like it's going to get 2 villagers out there. Not necessarily spectacular in terms of the result, but it definitely was scary for VortiX because for a brief moment it seemed like he was gonna lose quite a lot of bills. MarineLord has 5 relics. He's got all 5, so he can afford to gamble with one of those, and that he did. Now the town center is full of villagers. Imagine that the town center wasn't there. I don't think that MarineLord was expecting that second TC to be there. And if it wasn't there, this would have been a disaster here for VortiX. Now MarineLord is pushing up with mangonels and springolds as well. He's capping the sacred site on the right side. And the problem right now for VortiX is that he is right now quite exposed to this aggression here. His lumberjacks had to retreat. The gold mines are protected by 3 towers, so that's a no-no right now for MarineLord to push. But most of the army here from VortiX is just siege and spearmen. So the men-at-arms of the Rus player will work out quite nicely over here. It's a unit that you don't commonly see, men-at-arms from the Rus. It does have its own unique model and it actually looks pretty cool. But it's not something that you commonly see because usually the Rus go for knights or horse archers. Rus men-at-arms is not so common in battle. Mangonels, unleashing a volley on those villagers. You're going to have 2 casualties out there, or was it just 1? Those ladies must have been made out of metal because they survived a complete volley of 2 mangonels. Man-at-arms still trickling through, however. You do have even military numbers for the 2 players. Economies are also rather close. So this could come down to one decisive battle over here as both players are assembling their forces, including siege. Town center still full of units over here. I wonder what's inside. That could be 10 villagers inside, or that could be 10 hidden units. Sometimes players will hide some of their army in those towers, making it much more difficult for the opponent to evaluate how many forces or how many units they're up against. And there is 10 something in that TC, but I don't know what exactly that is, and our observer isn't selecting the town center, so we will never know. But this could possibly be even 10 men-at-arms out there, so you gotta be careful and respect that if you're MarineLord. And indeed, he's going to back off for the time being. He's slowly cleaning up the towers at the back of his base, but I think MarineLord should just sort of acknowledge the fact that he's playing from an advantageous position right now. His opponent has 2 town centers, but MarineLord himself has 82 villagers, so his villager count isn't terrible either, and of course he's got 5 relics and 1 sacred site. He actually doesn't have the sacred site on his side of the river, which is a little surprising, given the fact that he could technically cap it and start the sacred site countdown. Not the end of the world, but still a little surprising here from MarineLord. He's fortifying the middle here with the towers, and while those towers are much more expensive than the standard outpost, it's also going to be much more difficult to take them down, especially if you place some springald emplacements on them. And you see that you can even drop the arrow slits button on those, so you can place both. Springolds in large numbers right now for VortiX, as you do have some more man-at-arms coming in. It's only man-at-arms right now for MarineLord. Of course, with the double training of the Mongols, they will be a little more cost-effective, but the quality of those man-at-arms are actually comparable. Springolds opening fire against each other over here. That is just going to be an even trade. It is so far 4 versus 4, and that is going to be the 5th Springold being taken down potentially from VortiX. So in the end, it looks like MarineLord is able to take down no more than 4. Both sides losing 4 Springolds out there. Completely even trade, but MarineLord is now dropping a castle in the face of VortiX. Because one thing that MarineLord is doing is slowly crawling up with those towers, and now he's dropping a keep over here. And this is not a position that VortiX has an easy time assaulting, because you see, he's still assembling his spearmen and the Springolds. And by the time he gets over here, this castle is going up. He's gonna try to stop this one, and this is going to be a close call. But this castle is very close to completion, probably 70-80%. And VortiX is yet to contest it. Here come the spearmen, castle at like 90%, Mangonel setting up, and VortiX is realizing that he's not going to stop that castle. The castle goes up, and that's going to be a great staging ground here for MarineLord to assault the opponent's base. Boiling oil immediately being researched, and MarineLord isn't stopping. He's still mining stone. He's going to drop a second town center. Or, town center? A second castle. Speaking of town centers, however, VortiX could just move his town center in theory. He's got traction trebuchets coming in. With the Mongols, worst case scenario, he could move his TC, but he has to pack up all those buildings, and that's very, very micro-intensive. He has to pack up his entire base here if he wants to relocate. He's got the option to do it with the Mongols, But so far, he hasn't done that. 2 traction trebuchets, the third one being built, will start shelling that keep out there. For now, not a lot of springboards on the battlefield for MarineLord, so it's going to be difficult for him to take down those trebuchets. And I'm still not exactly sure how MarineLord wants to finish this game, but there is going to be a blue force moving in on the left side. You can see it on the minimap for a brief moment, right there. There's a blue force moving in, and I wonder if MarineLord is just using this as a diversion, because on the left side there is definitely some damage being done. I wonder if that villager counter is dropping or not. Looks like that's not the case. Instead, the man-at-arms are just trying to flank around, trying to jump on the springolds, and that they do. They're going to start taking down the springolds over here for VortiX, and VortiX's army is just nowhere to be found. He's going to lose the springolds, and the moment the springolds are gone, the blue springolds from MarineLord can start targeting the trebuchets. Now, MarineLord's army wasn't able to shield his own springolds either, so both sides are losing substantial amount of springolds over here. 4 trebuchets up now for VortiX, but the springolds will open up against one of those. 1 trebuchet goes down. MarineLord knows very well that he needs to keep that castle alive over here. He pulls villagers to repair. Mangonels, however, being overrun by infantry as MarineLord captures the sacred sites. VortiX has to take down all this siege. He takes down 1 mangonel. He's going for the second one as well. He's jumping on those springolds too. This is a great fight over here for VortiX. He's taking down a lot of expensive siege. But behind this one, he's also losing his own. So the trebuchets went down, and in the end, it looks like the springolds will get away from this one. So MarineLord able to save potentially 5 springolds over here, and VortiX's army numbers aren't looking spectacular now. And the thing that's concerning for VortiX is that his food eco was pushed pretty heavily here. This part of the map, this is where his food eco is at with the pastures. So his food eco isn't going to be super reliable. It's like 700 per minute. MarineLord's food eco is quite terrible as well for a 27-minute long game. It's 800 per minute as well. But the concern here for VortiX is that replacing the army is going to be difficult, especially because his food bank is also quite low, and now the springolds are opening up against the trebuchets. That's 1 trebuchet taken down, the second trebuchet gets taken down, and the third one is an incomplete trebuchet that will also get sniped down. There is no response here from VortiX. On paper, he has 34 army, but I just don't see it anywhere. And it's just mass springolds from MarineLord. VortiX steps out, and with that, MarineLord once again takes the lead. I don't think there was a lot of cases in this tournament where MarineLord fell behind in score. So him taking the lead once again is something that he's getting used to. It's 2-1 now for him. He's moving into match point. If he wins the next game, he's going to remain undefeated and he would move on to 4-0. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 4 between MarineLord and VortiX. We are going to the second home map of VortiX here. That is going to be with him playing as the English in red and MarineLord playing as the French in blue. We're going to have MarineLord spawning on the left side, and on the right side we will have VortiX. And if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be high view. You do have quite a lot of stealth forests all around, so it very much seems to be high view, and indeed the map is high view that we're playing. French traditional civilization for this map, although a little tricky to utilize because your biggest power for a long time is going to be your knights, and the knights have a limited amount of line of sight, especially in the stealth forests. So one of the tricky things to utilize with the French, and one of the tricky things to solve, is how you will be able to utilize your knights when it comes to fighting in the stealth forest, finding targets to kill. You often have to accompany them with a couple of scouts. This being said, on the other side, you're going to have VortiX, and I'm curious to see what exactly his game plan is going to be for this matchup. Because English versus French is a matchup that you commonly see, and it can be played in various ways. If the English put up a ton of pressure with archers or like longbowmen and spearmen, that's something that the French players might have trouble dealing with. But you also have to consider the possibility of playing a much more eco-heavy English approach, and just seeing a lot of farms being added. We have seen Mista trying to do that. Curious to see if VortiX is going to try and copy that build. We're seeing his POV right now. He's building that council hall with 3 villagers. Currently, moderately successful gathering sheep all across the map over here. He found a patch of 3 on the right side. He's chopping wood quite a bit, and he's still on gold. So the first question is what exactly he's going to use that gold for, because if he just wanted to go for pure longbowmen and spearmen, he might as well pull the villagers off from gold. It's possible that that's going to be for an early blacksmith. It's possible he's just banking up those resources so he can completely abandon the gold mine. And then later on, when he needs the blacksmith upgrade, he's going to just grab it. And for MarineLord, he's going up with the School of Cavalry. No surprise about that one. That's the usual landmark to age up with for French. He does have a mill going on, but I would be somewhat surprised to see him going professional scouts, although against the English, it's not a terrible idea. Because the English usually go for longbows, spearmen, so it's not like your scouts will be threatened that much. Of course, spearmen can also catch the scouts carrying carcasses, but you can evade the enemy's army quite a bit. So, for example, if you look at this hunt on the left side of MarineLord's base, unless this is specifically pushed by VortiX, which would require him to send his forces all the way to the left flank, MarineLord should be able to pick up that hunt. He might not be able to pick up this hunt up front, because that could be denied by the opponent's army, but he might even get away yoinking some of this hunt on the north, speaking of which, both of those hunts are very close to each other for VortiX. 19 villagers right now for MarineLord, 18 only for VortiX. We have to keep in mind that the French can slowly build up an economy lead based on the fact that they can train villagers a little faster. So that's something that can be considered over here for both players. School of Cavalry, just now finishing for MarineLord. Whereas on the other side, you're going to have the Council Hall finished basically at the same moment. And let's see if MarineLord goes for Professional Scouts. He doesn't have the gold for that, but being French, he gets a discount. He needs 192 for it. And he's still mining gold. He's dropping an archer range as we speak. And he's queuing up a horseman. So given the fact that he's adding a horseman, despite the fact that he has the gold, I'm suspecting that he's going for professional scouts. He walled off the southern side of the map, so he's preventing the opponent from sneaking around with a couple of longbows, hitting his lumberjacks. And on the other side, it looks like VortiX is going to play an eco-heavy approach. There could be some issues with that farm placement, though. We'll have to check the influence radius of that farm, or that mill, because I'm not sure if the two farms that are right next to the TC, the one on the far right and the one on the far left, are actually in the influence radius of the mill. If they aren't, it's a bit of a blunder, because you need those farms to be powered up by the mill, especially at the beginning, because you're really counting on the extra food income from the farming boost. So I'm curious to see if those are actually affected by the mill or not. If they are, it's perfectly fine. If not, it's a disaster. Professional scouts on the way for MarineLord as expected. His opponent isn't really contesting the map, so he's going to have no trouble picking up the hunts over here. And am I right that these farms, you see, the one on the right side and the one on the left side, those shouldn't be in the influence radius of the mill? I'm hoping that our observer will take a look at that at some point, but we'll have to see about that one. For the time being, VortiX is playing quite defensive. This is a Mista-style approach. He's the one that is playing very defensive English, and then just going for that juggernaut food economy with the farming, and then unleash his death and destruction in Castle Age, basically just building on that massive economy that he already has. Now, one of the things that Mista does with that build order, however, is that he's sometimes much more dangerous in Feudal Age. So, despite the fact that your English opponent is building up an economy over here, you still have to respect the fact that the English can add longbows quite fast. So in just 1 or 2 minutes, you could easily find yourself overrun by like 20, 30 longbows. So, well, if you're looking at the opponent, the English opponent, and he's building up a lot of farming, and you don't see a lot of army, you might be like, okay, I can just sit back, I don't need to make a ton of army. You have to be active with your scouts and make sure you check out what your opponent is doing every once in a while, because it's possible that VortiX is going to appear with a bunch of longbows and spears close to your base. MarineLord is using that horseman to check out on his opponent, because keep in mind that his scouts are busy carrying in carcasses. And that's one of the components of MarineLord's game plan over here. If his scouts are carrying in carcasses, he needs to find something else that is going to take a look at VortiX's base. Because as I said, VortiX could pile up a bunch of longbows and spearmen in just a matter of seconds. So despite the fact that VortiX is focused on building up a farming eco right now, you could see a big army appearing in the face of MarineLord anytime. For MarineLord, he isn't really investing into army. He's at 11 military population. Other side, it's 10 for VortiX. Both of the players playing quite passive right now. Looks like the longbows will get some volleys out on those horsemen, and it looks like one horseman also gets picked off. That's a nice pickup over there for VortiX. He's got his farming eco ready to kick off, and if you look at that food income per minute, right now it's of course weaker than the French player's food eco, but we have to respect the fact that of course MarineLord is living off the carcasses, which will eventually get depleted. Whereas for VortiX, his food eco is infinite. But for the time being, this actually helps the French, because the French, of course, will have a window in which they have a much better food economy than the English player. So whenever you're building up a farming eco like that with the English, it's imperative that you build it up as fast as possible, because you need to be able to match opponents that are potentially hunting or gathering berries or whatnot. VortiX is now pushing up with his own forces. He's got a scary force of longbows and spearmen, although the spearmen numbers aren't spectacular. So he has to be careful here, because he doesn't know how much cavalry MarineLord has. And you see, in the stealth forest is the stealthy army of VortiX hiding, but you gotta love the fact that MarineLord has a sneaky scout that's going to spot it, and that will be immensely valuable. MarineLord knows fully well that this army is over there. Out of the shadows pop out the longbows, but this is something that MarineLord is fully aware of. I wonder if he's going to add 1 or 2 knights here, because those would be immensely helpful against a player that only has 1 spearman accompanying that army. Defensive tower preemptively built over here for MarineLord. He's respecting the power of those longbows, and I do see a barracks being dropped as well as a guild hall. So MarineLord is on the way to Castle Age, which means we're going to see some men-at-arms being added. That's going to be a great unit against those longbows. But of course, you have to keep in mind that the English also have their own men-at-arms. So if the English player VortiX gets to Castle Age, we are going to see those men-at-arms pop out as well, and those will be able to beat the MarineLord men-at-arms quite well in battle. This being said, VortiX is not yet going up to Castle Age, so MarineLord is going to have a nice little window here with Castle Age army against Feudal Age army. Preemptive defensive tower is paying off, because as you see, VortiX isn't able to push that gold mine, and he's going to have to retreat for the time being. He hasn't gotten the infantry siege upgrade right now, and you get the feel that the English player's window to push this one has sort of closed, at least for the time being. Because now he's going to face some men-at-arms. He could be facing some siege weapons very soon. Looks like the scouts are just running past those longbows. They're probably heading for the hunt of the red player VortiX. But now, if there's a siege workshop coming in as well for MarineLord, this could be very difficult for the English player to fight against. In fact, that's probably how you should approach this one for MarineLord. Go for an early siege workshop, start adding mangonels to support your men-at-arms, because the men-at-arms will be great, but there is a lot of longbows over there. So despite the fact that your men-at-arms will have a high ranged armor, you will have 4, 5, 6 men-at-arms on the battlefield against 25-ish longbows, which means that you still want to have something that supports them. Blacksmith up for both players over here. You do have the melee attack upgrades already in for MarineLord. That is coming free for the French, so obviously he has that. And he's going for a ranged defense upgrade. Ranged attack already in for VortiX. No ranged defense or any other blacksmith upgrades for himself. He's on the way to Castle Age with the King's Palace as we speak. MarineLord at 44 villagers. VortiX currently at 39. But once that King's Palace is finished, of course, he's going to have a second town center, which means that he's going to be able to take over in the villager department. So this puts MarineLord on a timer to a certain extent, because he cannot just wait forever. Once again, bit of a flickering screen. This happens when you switch between player POVs, I know that myself, and you can do that with the hotkey. So I'm not exactly sure what happened there for the observer, but he probably accidentally pressed the key or just tried to switch back and forth or something like that. But that flickering happens when you switch from one player's perspective to the other. Not exactly sure why that happens, but it is something that consistently happens in that case. VortiX up to Castle Age himself, and despite the fact that he started out building up a food economy based on farms, it's not a huge farming eco right now. Archers now moving in from MarineLord, hitting away on those spearmen mostly. I don't think a single villager was killed. The archers were focusing on the spearmen. Now the longbows adjust their position. There is the veteran longbowman upgrade coming in for VortiX, so he's gonna be all good to go, and now you're seeing him adding a ton more farming, and oh, that's gonna be some... Oh, that's a perfect farm placement. That's the perfect farm placement, and he just spam-clicked those farms. You couldn't really see that because it was at the edge of the screen, but those farm foundations appeared in like half a second, and those are the perfect foundations, and those are not the foundations that you get if you just spam-click the mill. If you spam-click the mill, you will get a 3-2-3 arrangement, and he actually has a 4-2-4 arrangement, which is more effective. That's an unbelievable level of micro over there. It's a small thing, I know, but that's just beautiful to see. Building up that farming eco in the most effective way in like half a second is something that 95% of the people on this planet can only dream of. For now, MarineLord is still ferrying in deer, but you gotta respect the fact that at this point, MarineLord is running low on carcasses, so soon he is gonna have to find alternative sources of food. There is still some berries to work with, and at this point, his guild hall is set on gold, and there's still some more hunt to work with. But at the end of the day, at some point he's gonna have to transition to the farming eco. The question is how long he can wait before he transitions there. Looks like the archers came in here trying to harass the gold miners. It's not going to work out at all here for MarineLord. I think he wanted to distract the army of his opponent with the men-at-arms from the south, but VortiX didn't take the bait, and he's going to take down the archers without problems. Looks like a couple of men-at-arms did get in, though, so they might get 1 or 2 kills over here on those lumberjacks. Barracks are now being added by VortiX, so he's adding his own men-at-arms. He's saying, okay, men-at-arms war, so be it. I'm going to add my own. And now this distraction on the right side is definitely helping MarineLord, because now his opponent doesn't have any safety here to the gold miners. There's a couple of spears, but those would just die to the men-at-arms. Looks like the town center fire is going to be able to force away MarineLord's men-at-arms for the time being. Food eco now skyrocketing for the English player. You see that. It's going to be 1,000 food per minute as opposed to 500, despite the fact that MarineLord still has the carcasses. And this, on the right side, that's sustainable. This isn't. So MarineLord, as I said, is on a timer, and that timer is counting down more and more. A second town center is being added, which makes things quite interesting, because now MarineLord, once again with the faster training French villagers, he can get away a tiny bit in terms of villager count. The difference isn't going to be huge, but at least he isn't going to fall behind in terms of villagers. In fact, he's going to be able to build up a small advantage here. VortiX is playing quite defensive here. He's walling himself up, which is the right thing to do. Any moment in this game, you could see some French knights arrive and just try to raid your base. So, especially if your unit composition is slow moving, like we're seeing right now, men-at-arms and longbows, you want to have your starting base walled, so you give no window for MarineLord to harass you with any cavalry. Behind this one, MarineLord has been quite active picking up the relics. As you see, he's got multiple monks roaming the map, looking for relics. Quite a lot of relics are far away from the base of MarineLord, but he should still have no issues picking those up. As you see, he's gonna have this one soon, and I think he hasn't found this one yet, but the rest of them should be able to fall into his hands very soon. He still has a group of units to the north, and it looks like that's a third town center for MarineLord. He isn't messing around. He's realizing that, okay, if you are not attacking me, I might as well use that advantage to just build up a juggernaut economy. And now we're seeing some mangonels being added, springolds being added, and knights are also on the menu here for MarineLord. He's gonna have the Cantold Settles upgrade, and I love those men-at-arms being hidden. Those are waiting for the perfect moment. What's gonna happen is that when VortiX pulls out of his base and he's going to be fighting the main force of MarineLord, those men-at-arms will go in and start killing villagers. Because MarineLord wants to make that attack and raid happen when his opponent is distracted. And this is going to be a tough fight to take for VortiX, because I don't think that VortiX has springolds. And without springolds, he's going to struggle a lot against those mangonels. The mangonels are really the kryptonite of the English. One volley and your entire army is gone. So you are probably in a bit of a trouble here for VortiX, because his entire army is pretty much longbows. So knights and mangonels could wipe this entire thing out. Look at this. 40 longbows, 4 spearmen, 9 men-at-arms. That's a composition that the Royal Knights are perfect against. And did you see that scout? There's the scout for MarineLord. He has spotted the army moving forward. MarineLord knows fully well that this army is coming over. Love the move from VortiX to stand the scout forward, because he needs to know if there is an ambush being prepared. If you go through that stealth forest with a slow-moving army like longbows, that's suicide. You could easily get caught off guard, and this is why you need to have a scout here for VortiX that's escorting you, and there's the distraction. The moment VortiX started focusing on that battle that is to come, his eco is going to get rampaged. Some crossbows, arbalestry being added here by MarineLord as well. Looks like VortiX is going to pull the men-at-arms, trying to focus down the mangonels, and it looks like he will actually win this battle here. The problem is that behind this one, he's losing his villager advantage. We have seen this over and over again. You focus on one battle, and you don't notice the raid in your eco. And despite the fact that VortiX wins a decisive battle on the front line, He falls behind so much in terms of villagers because he just lost all of his gold miners. New mangonel being set up over here. Knights are now joining the party over here trying to shield the mangonel with their bodies. Mangonel gets some beautiful shots out, but longbows are still there in large numbers. Men-at-Arms still burning down farms over here. VortiX finally reacts. On the right side, there is a Volo attempt over here, and this could actually work out. Indeed, it does work out. MarineLord gets the Spearman with the Vololo, pops out the Mangonel now, gets a volley out. The Men-at-Arms are now gone from the battlefield for VortiX, so he has no tools to take down those Mangonels with. MarineLord is going to pull the villagers to repair the Mangonel. The dance may begin, and as you see, VortiX will have to dance away from those Mangonel fires so much. Men-at-Arms still rampaging his eco, and with no anti-cavalry units right now, you're just going to see those longbows being forced back by the Knights, and the Men-at-Arms here from MarineLord keep killing the villagers here from VortiX. VortiX is now falling behind in terms of eco. He is deciding to tap out. And with that, MarineLord takes a 3-1 victory here. Consistent, deadly performance here from MarineLord. And this is exactly the type of performance that we have seen from him in the entire tournament. Just cold-blooded, brutal execution. He's coming in and he's playing so well in every single game. And VortiX didn't make huge mistakes. It's just the fact that both players played fairly standard, and MarineLord was able to take down VortiX because MarineLord outperformed VortiX in the small details. In this battle, the ability for MarineLord to diagnose that his opponent is playing so passive that he has a window for free town centers, and then the ability, or just the thought, into using that scout to see when the opponent is coming forward, and the moment he saw that army leave, sending in the men-at-arms. Those are small details, and those things are working out well for MarineLord, and that's the reason why he was able to overcome an otherwise very powerful VortiX. With that, VortiX falls to the middle part of the bracket, still far from being eliminated, but he's also pretty far from the top 2 spots, which would guarantee a spot in the semifinals. MarineLord keeps his position as the number 1 player in the bracket, the only undefeated player out there currently standing at 4-0, as he's awaiting his opponent in the final round. Of course, if he wins there, he's going to be the number 1 player getting into the semifinals. The 2 top players from the Swiss stage get directly into the semifinals. Ranks 3, 4, 5, and 6 will play in the quarterfinals, and the winners of those will play against rank 1 and 2 in the semifinals. So there is some extra incentive for the players to get to the top 2 positions. MarineLord holding on to his top spot right now, whereas for VortiX, he now falls down to the bracket. I think he still has a window to be able to get to the 2nd spot, but he definitely needs a win tomorrow to have a chance on it, and I think other matches also have to have certain results for him to have a shot at this. With that being said, for VortiX, of course, making sure that he's not eliminated, because he's still quite far from it, is still a good accomplishment, and now he's waiting his day 5 opponent, hoping that he can somehow get back to that top 2, whereas for MarineLord, really it's all about keeping that number 1 position right now and guaranteeing his spot in the semifinals.